About 15 years ago, I was attending a church, and on a Wednesday night, a man walked in who was, by all appearances, passing through town on foot, and he was really eager to talk to our senior pastor, who happened to be on vacation that night. But we called him in, and he ultimately came in and spoke to this man who said, "I have a word from God, and I really need to speak to your people." The pastor, for good or for bad, let this man speak. And while the message was really important, and I'll talk about that in a moment, this man's delivery included an F-bomb. And for that, a lot of people dismissed him out of hand. But for those of us who were looking beyond the surface things, this man was talking about God's love for his church, how God loved this church, and how God wanted this church to become a praying church, and that if it didn't, God would destroy this church within a year. It was a really powerful message. And I know that the senior pastor took it to heart and implemented a prayer service on Saturdays that to this day is still going on. The hearts of the people needed to be turned toward God in prayer. So the reason I share this example with you is because I am starting a study in Amos, the prophet of Amos. And Amos is not a priest. He wasn't brought up in Levitical tradition. He didn't have all this education. He was a poor shepherd south of Jerusalem. And God said, "I have a message for you." And so Amos obediently went. I'm sure as a shepherd, he was kind of stinky. He didn't fit the tradition, so people judged him. But he did what God asked him to do. This is something you'll see reflected in Acts 26 when Paul is explaining his call to speak for God. When God calls someone to speak, he expects their obedience. We, as people receiving that message, have a duty, an obligation to listen carefully. We don't always know who God chooses, but we can listen for his words and test and approve them. My friends, as we go through Amos, I hope you'll follow along with me and learn from what God has to say to the folks back then and to us today.